plan for the purposes of the development of this country. We are of the firm conviction that given even the current appointments, because I think that if you have followed our campaign and if you read the Greater Transformational Plan, it will become evident to you that we were even calling
must exercise their superpower with discretion and demonstrate full commitment to the principles of accountability and transparency. 2. Upon appointments to key positions in government and the public sector, the President must be commended for living up to his commitment to establish an new government. Reducing the number of ministerial appointments to a maximum of 60 is without doubt a significant policy shift and a potential game changer, particularly in terms of its signaling effect and impact. The reduction in the number of ministries and consolidation of same must result in further cuts in public expenditure. In addition, the quality of appointments made so far to a large extent demonstrates a commitment to infuse new energy, dynamism, efficiency, and innovation in government business.
The movement for change to active parts in the last elections. And so matters that has to deal with the economy of this country and the general governance structure of this country is very much dear to our hearts. And it is upon this reason that we have decided to invite you here this morning to let you understand the position of the movement for change so that Ghanaians will know that indeed there is always alternatives to whatever is happening. Rather here meeting all the leaders of the movement for change. At appropriate time we mention their names. Without going further, I would call upon the spokesperson of the movement for change, the lawyer who will deliver our message to the press. I will entreat all media houses and journalists gathered here to pay close attention to the thematic areas that you will be delving into so that the stories that will come out will focus on these areas. Without much ado, let's welcome lawyer Afenyo-Markin to take over.
So, I don't take this opportunity to welcome all of you to. So, I then once again invite, thank all of you for able to invite. My name is Afenyo-Markin. Before I go on and deliver a message, I want to first of all introduce some of my colleagues here. Indeed, our structure is after the statement, we will be having a Q&A session, and then our structure is to have various people who address or answer questions on the various thematic areas. So on my far left is my brother, Mahama. He will be answering questions on corruption and governance. And then we have Dr. Ramsey. He will be answering questions on democracy. We have one person also here. He was our vice presidential candidate. We have a lead communicator, Mr. Solomon. And then we have Andrew Chu, among those. And then we have Manaya, which will be handling issues concerning the economy. So, without much ado, I'll go ahead and then deliver what we have for the media. So, ladies and gentlemen of the media fraternity, I wish first on behalf of the leadership of the movement for change to express our profound gratitude to you responding to our invitation to attend this press conference. As one of the leading political forces in our country, we consider it appropriate and indeed a moral responsibility to express our views on current and emerging issues dominating our political landscape. The movement has followed with keen interest developments in Ghana following the conclusion of the 2024 general elections and the subsequent installation of a new government led by the NDC. I would like to make the following observations. 1. Dynamics in Parliament. The unprecedented supermajority in Parliament gained by the NDC, without doubt, signaled the potential imbalance in the architecture of power in Parliament. Very much different from the dynamics of the hand Parliament under the 8th Parliament of the 4th Republic. Be that as it may, the nature of hostilities and rancorous conduct that has so far characterized parliamentary proceedings, including but not limited to the vetting of political appointees, must be a source of concern for all those who have a genuine interest in safeguarding our democratic credentials. While it is expected that the minority in Parliament, led by the NPP, will hold the majority by extension, the ruling government to account, which to a large extent they seem to be doing with some admiration. It is important that they do so without grandstanding and a disruptive posture. Democracy is not all about disagreement. It is essentially about agreeing to disagree. The majority, on the other hand, must exercise their superpower with discretion and demonstrate full commitment to the principles of accountability and transparency. 2. On appointments to key positions in government and the public sector, the President must be commended for living up to his commitment to establish an new government. Reducing the number of ministerial appointments to a maximum of 60 is without doubt a significant policy shift and a potential game changer, particularly in terms of its signaling effect and impact. The reduction in the number of ministries and consolidation of same must result in further cuts in public expenditure. In addition, the quality of appointments made so far to a large extent demonstrates a commitment to infuse new energy, dynamism, efficiency, and innovation in government business. The era of Team B seems to be over. Our hope, though, is for the new appointments not to be obsessed with the trappings and arrogance of power, which will consign them to the same fate as faced by some of their predecessors. It is also worth mentioning that a delicate balance of maintaining both regional and gender balance in the appointment has to a large extent been achieved, albeit with room for further improvement. Furthermore, the speed with which the appointment has been made from a historical context is worthy of commendation. 3. Corruption. The canker of corruption is without doubt one of the significant challenges confronting our nation. All governments in our recent history as a nation have spoken with fervor about stamping out corruption. And yet, as a people, we have made very little progress in dealing substantively with the problem of corruption. It is against this background that we must evaluate the efforts by the current government in combating the scourge of corruption by first establishing the oral team. This, coupled with the recent pronouncements and actions of the Office of the Special Prosecutor, may seem to be a new aggressive approach towards dealing with corruption. The cases currently being investigated by the OSP, including the ones affecting the Minister of Finance, Ken Ofuriatta, have been in the public domain for some time now. The move by the OSP will offer the said political appointees an opportunity to defend and acquit themselves using due process or face the full rigors of the law. The tendencies for the acts or omissions of selected officials to be used as a smear campaign against all politicians must be frowned upon. In spite of these early efforts by government and the OSP referred to above, aimed at dealing with corruption, one would caution that in order not to fall into the same pit as previous governments, which has led to a NATO paradigm in Ghana, on tackling corruption. And NATO simply means no action, talk only. It is the considered opinion of the Movement for Change that a more comprehensive, robust, and institutionalized approach to dealing with corruption must be adopted. As indicated in the Great Transformational Plan of the Movement for Change, there are 6 practical policy measures that must be considered in tackling corruption. 1. Creation of an anti-corruption czar or Caesar with full constitutional backing. Under the current system where the office of the special prosecutor is established by law, but lacks constitutional backing, political influence can hinder the anti-corruption efforts of the OSP. In this regard, the GTP proposes the establishment of an independent anti-corruption czar with prosecutorial powers protected under the Constitution and separate from the powers granted to the Attorney General by the Constitution. This office would therefore replace the current special prosecutor's establishment and be truly immune from political interference. As an independent constitutional body, such an office must be fully resourced, taking into consideration the amount of money that can be saved as a result of the work of the Anti-Corruption Czar. 2. A unified and strengthened Anti-Corruption Act. The GTP proposes the consolidation of all existing anti-corruption related legislation into one comprehensive, enabling legal framework to deal with corruption, and that will define without ambiguity the nature, scope, and content of all corruption and corruption-related activities, and also ensure that very stringent and non-negotiable penalties are prescribed for political appointees and other political sector officials and civil servants who are cited and indicted for corruption. Currently, various bodies and institutions, by their instruments of establishment, lay claim to having legal powers to investigate cases of corruption. These include the OSP, IOCO, Shiraj, the Police Service, the CID, and the National Security. Everybody's work is nobody's work. 3. Compulsory asset declaration and lifestyle audits. Political officials, and not just political appointees, would be required by law to undergo periodic, thorough asset declarations with real-time lifestyle audits to track unexplained wealth. 4. Transparent procurement systems. The GTP proposes reforms in procurement laws to eliminate the incidence of collusion, political patronage, and cronyism, ensuring that contracts are awarded on merit and not based on political or other considerations. 5. Empowering citizens and civil society to watch out against corruption. The GTP proposes the introduction of an anti-corruption citizen charter, legally mandating whistleblower protection and incentivizing citizens to report acts of corruption. It also proposes incentives and other forms of support to civil society organizations in enhancing advocacy against corruption. These measures would ensure that no government official or political appointee, regardless of their status, will be able to use the color of their office to manipulate the government machinery and political system for good gain, for personal gain. And the fourth issue is constitutional reforms. The lack of progress in implementing constitutional reforms, which have been extensively debated by various sections of the Ghanaian society, is an indictment on all previous governments. It is refreshing to note that the President has very early on in his administration empaneled a committee of very distinguished personalities, many of them known for their passion and commitment to the reform process. And equally important are recognized for their professional integrity and independence of thought. It is our fervent hope that their recommendations will not be buried within the corridors of power. It is worth noting that the GTP of the movement contains a comprehensive set of proposals for constitutional reform, including but not limited to the establishment of a government of national unity and the establishment of a second chamber of parliament, all with a view to promoting a more inclusive and decentralized governance architecture. Now, fifth is the economy. The Minister for Finance has indicated that he proposes to present the 2025 budget statement and government's economic policy by the middle of March, whilst commending the minister for his efforts to meet the constitutional requirement of representing the budget before the 31st of March. The movement would like, among other things, to advise as follows. 1. The ministry must undertake a complete overhaul of the architecture of the national budget, focusing first on ensuring macroeconomic stability, anchored on the two pillars of fiscal consolidation and tight monetary policy, working in consultation with the Bank of Ghana. 2. Prioritizing catalytic investment in the investment in the productive sectors of the economy, namely agriculture, industry, and tourism, as against investments in social services and infrastructure development. 3. Providing a cocktail of fiscal and non-fiscal incentives to leverage financing and investments from the private sector, particularly to support infrastructural development in roads, bridges, water delivery and sanitation services. This should include attracting private sector participation in the full gamut of the energy sector, from generation, transmission, and distribution. It is worth noting that these policy measures will require a review of the current Exemptions Act, which is a disincentive to the attraction of private capital. 4. Negotiating with the independent power producers, IPPs, in the energy sector on a debt equity swap policy that will give them a stake in the private sector consortium that will partly own and manage the energy sector assets of government. 5. Abolishing some of the nuisance taxes, including the e-levy, betting tax, COVID levy, and fumigation levy, to replace the shortfall in revenue that will be occasioned by the removal of the above-named taxes, and to optimize government revenue in general. The ministry should effect an increase in VAT from the current 15% to 17%, but separate the calculation of VAT from the NHIL and GEF fund in order to avoid compounding the calculation of the taxes and levies. The anticipated reduction in public expenditure arising from the reduction in the number of ministries and the number of ministers will contribute to closing the revenue gap. In addition, the aggressive efforts to reduce the incidence of corruption in public service will also save government additional revenue loss. 6. Retain the current 3% flat tax paid by MSMEs with a specified turnover and eliminate the additional 3% charge as distributors' margin. 7. As an expenditure control policy measure and to support government's fiscal consolidation efforts, review the implementation of all existing government flagship programs with a view not to discontinue them, but to reduce government's financial exposure to the programs and make them more financially sustainable. 8. Initiate the implementation of government's 24-hour economic policy, starting with enterprises under the One District, One Factory, as the 1-to-1F program. 9. The stabilization of the local currency is of the prime importance in maintaining a healthy economy. In this regard, whilst working towards a more robust and comprehensive medium to long-term solution, particularly in the area of boosting exports and enhancing import substitution, the ministry should introduce some short-term policy interventions designed to regulate demand and supply of foreign exchange. In this regard, government should suspend with immediate effect until further notice the operation of all forest bureau and mandate all forex transactions to be conducted through the commercial banks and the Bank of Ghana. In addition, government existing regulations on the retention of forex from export revenue must be strictly enforced. 10. The Ministry of Finance should work with the Bank of Ghana to progressively bring down the central bank policy rate to induce and stimulate a reduction in interest rates. 11. The Ministry of Finance should work with the Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Trade, Industry and Agribusiness to introduce short-term policy measures to reduce food inflation, which will have a corresponding effect on reducing the level of inflation in general. 12. The government should review with immediate effect the taxes, duties, levies, and charges at the ports with a view to reducing same, which will be an incentive for enhanced compliance in the payment of duties and also contribute to a reduction in the level of imported inflation, since Ghana is still highly import-dependent economy. It is worth noting that the GTP has some detailed policy recommendations on all the proposals outlined above. Sixth point is on galamsey and the protection of the environment. Government is yet to demonstrate with clarity its policy recommendations on dealing with galamsey. This is a source of great concern, considering the fact that galamsey poses an existential threat not only to the environment, particularly our water bodies and forest reserves, but indeed also to the efficient and effective management of the country's natural resources. Again, the GTP has a comprehensive policy blueprint on this matter. It is time for action, ladies and gentlemen. I do hope that the issues raised in this press conference and the solutions proposed will go a long way to support government's resetting agenda. Ghana first. Ghana will definitely rise again. Thank you.
I think he deserves more than what you did. We will take questions from the media, but before then, let me do a quick translation in P for the account stations. Kenya and the top of what lawyer begin how can remember me appear there, your culture and the same. Parliament now, National Democratic Congress, Enya di Padugona, ne NPP nya, di Bakumabi ono. Ya if we say power now about the end because and you know, on which we get it my na say Ayɛka ya budi sa enkwada brono edosu. And the movement for change for parliamentarians, HSSL. Omunyo the same penny for your mother, so go up with them my own. Upon yesterday, we are one year any table. At also, movement for change say, yet don't want penny, your mamma, sister, or castle of a friendly part. It was 60 as ministers are so far. No, the elder didn't actually say a new system will make me a fat. Sounds like 50-60. The sounds we had say what they go crane in the boom abumwa or muye. Yeah, catch your man penny, John Mahama, and in a palm for say, yes, you demand, you catch them with a moon goodie. The moon boy said, Sikaya, the Bishop Monsano manager for Guinea, I'm going to be Yaguma. Now, poor man, Obra, never Unia, and to a few of my the member of any school papa, or where a do of food, and to form my son of matrimony. Also, any sofa so. Woman for change say, Adia, a chiwa dear cry, Nikatas, chef, chrono, docree. Now, you say OSP, and as office of the special prosecutor, Nakasa, I shall say to an Amombia, or Pesse, Udimuduma. Yanni and Sushiamuno, send a campaign, a catcher and 1 team, and so still, you know, that you meet him. Yadi say, Yadi be a friend, corruptions are. Our one show be as old to me. Who secretary should a bon one or time one or where do us fast. Till so my penny, yeah, boy anymore, or rehearsal. Yes, as was OSP said, a number idea. One more, what to suffer, or you rock and Furiata, no, any more to count in. One more day answers answer, giving you free because Ghana sick be hanging. Like into me, sir. No action, no talk. Ye kasam kwa no move and say, chiwa dear. Ebio, constitutional reforms, woman kaya. Ye kachira mo say, ye ma bona ye didi man. She may be one. And it's yes, I carry my penny. Ye na ya we say wati abedekwa or so mungo. And I know Professor Mills Bio TV. We had $6.3 million for Angosiaga. We were going to buy also by TV. 3 million Ghana cedis Angosiaga. And pray the Yampesi better say. We don't want to abandon. And we are going to Yamfanya movement to say, Yampesi Muso Mubia or would make you the big Mabua ama constitutional reforms. About economy national movement association nyoma kama ye mfutu ma owura Mahama obekaya owini na election no movement yepeni owura lantemante kwa nan ekochia no okwa one go the position and one ska ye momoko jare the great transformational plan get your this great transformational plan no ko share ni say emu na nsem de no baby a Ghana ye takela yamfa ye ho nko IMF mu bio ye die wo ntia no movement na kirem se sika ebeba ni sem no onfa nko hye mia bia bi ti se agriculture nyuma envididuma ene de keka ho le bema nnuane nyuma aide aba na importer ana se nyoma dodo ye crafty amano ne de ba emma ye sidi no enya amode no eso aide etumi etwa movement is so aka se Ora, can you forget another bank of 5 years? Be afraid of compound calculation of VAT. More we business in the money. Say, I did NHI, as I got gross home near carbon mass, and I be applied VAT, and no name my port to go for quarantine and you upon your Okuma. Movement so minor, Ora Mahama or Pam for Israel, Munkas Adin. Never ya, VAT in a year 15%, Yan 17%. They free NHI, no, and who said a bay at Nippon Valley. Name of young maintenance 3% flat rate now. Ye de Ediduman. The crack movement to say. Galam say, why when himself, ye got to a by now. I gave a qua and my Ghana for the $2 Mama, a insure yes and yes, Sasia yes. Oboba, you who say, oh, 2 1 a month. Men Manon Bay say, I'm not for. Ye shed any. It's answer yen and one galamsea movement you be denied now so na ya na Ghana for and what I don't know way and I want to offer. I knew some book Sana become one for income. You don't get questions are free 84. One more Minidano or my penny, you know we say if you but it's also your budget to when I use some way dear man. Ya me ya do no de shemu a ye besa afre ma mama ha ya be bona baso wa fa nhemu so a de ode be ba no ye besa ba ya be de ya ba be discuss na ye dem ase be so o busa asem ya bo wai media house with any di ankasa se de be ya atwetwefo ye oni po bebre wo ha no mo a e de lawyer wa krado se obeji kwasi bia obe ye you betumi answer. Yes.
For the purposes of the development of this country, we are of the firm conviction that given even the current appointment, because I think that if you have followed our campaign and you've read the Greater Transformational Plan, it will become evident to you that we were even calling for a lean and efficient government. 40 ministers. The president has exceeded it by 20, but it still finds expression in that conversation that we've been having about having a lean government. And so that is why you would notice that even in this press conference, we've acknowledged the fact that it's made some strides. We are only asking for him to continue to fulfill the promises that he's made to the good people of Ghana. And I think that collectively, the government of national unity that we've been trumpeting all this while should be, should become a reality, so that the generality of the Ghanaian people will benefit from the governance architecture that we've designed for the good people of this country. I thank you.
Any more questions from?
The betting tax is paid on the winning. The probability of winning, so no, I can't joking. I say, we need credit. It will be sure not the told you about and go forward here, and so revenue and government in Yano, and Yahibia. It's a didn't know we need free. Now, a month for a worse segment of the economy, no more in how. Now, rather, no, so many income, they will consume. The more all consume, the more government will be revenue from direct tax and consumption tax and indirect tax.
Who says say Mambon a young youth for Nana?
What you say?
Who say say youth for Nana?
A quite the brave or why, you bet me a correct side. But the say enforcing the laws. So, betting no, it will age limit. And I feel so, it will be a regulation into enforcement and a better and boom, that's all the tax ever to say. You see, the tax you buy, it is clear, say, reduce the patronage, and I'll be back. Still, who travel baby, I won't go for about Chinkua or more ASR. It's your GD said, over high economy, no, so they will retain betting tax than removing it. Until we are proposing that the betting tax should be.
The name and the media
is Daniel from Pan-African TV.
Obisa no tweet ni kan tweet. The guy lawyer Pierre Danko my India say yes, we are reconfirming or confirming our proposal to them through the campaign. Say yeah by be even free. So the minimum will be 1%. Now we show 1%. So we share revenue in 2023. That's the data available. So the levy MI just about 1.1 billion Ghana cedis. And I propose say. Gov't a debate. Yenfa VAT in 315 and come 17. That's VAT in so 2023 and my 14.4 billion cedis. So we live in free. Now the VAT in the back. We need additional revenue. Now the essay say so we should more amount for butchery because a tono a bit more a regressive in the economics in the country. And I say what the bar and bois or minor and development because one, ultimately he said almost 2 years then I said VAT air consumption tax. Need to know and yet then it say we introduce levy here over to me bypass the payment. Secondly, so we most you can say some no a month for being a GDA war, President William, this is a wash our share, ultimate district. It's here the firm conventions say, for my penny tier, they do say, allow 2 pounds for any king clear on vet is a be free. A bebo, they are tossing so, Gov't now come, they get me a feeling with the strategic review of the tax system and tax regime. Economists really be nuisance tax, you can't kind, and yet 11. Don't be brave or hard, put the bar and more or minor productivity. It is only film now the way bar to say party bar, lady dear no, and yet do, and also the incident that is in Kofua, a bewo almost because the one called baby at the Jibat and Kotadi, and I say, so look, I know, in my real tear classy, or no mobile money or heavy, or ya no at him, but I'll go baby at the Jibat and Kotadi now, or I say, or yet in pattern that you have. Here they didn't say we live in Fima, you lose about 1.1 billion. Now the VAT, but you gain almost 2 billion. It's just all your own crowd being more revenue. And there are other things you say we look beside it actually more the revenue for any the gain that you propose.
Send your can one, and person mean this as a betting tax no.